So here we are, Eloise Howser, in the Charles Russell Speechlys Terrace rooms, where your exhibition, By the Deep, by the Mark, has been running for a number of weeks. Tell me, what was the inspiration for that name?
The title is actually an old maritime surveying term for taking readings of the depth of any body of water, and they would have by hand thrown a plumb line over the edge of the survey boat by the deep and reeled it in and taken a reading by the mark. So they had this term which in a way encapsulated that action, and we're actually sitting on a 1928 Port of London Authority map which shows you in increments the different depths of the Thames as it was in the 1920s, and all of those measurements would have been taken by the deep, by the mark, by hand, by surveyors working for the Port of London Authority, who would have almost literally leant over the side of the boat and thrown the line down.
Describe to me what Somerset House would have been like before the construction of the embankment, because people will be familiar with this great public space and the incredible square where the ice rink is and the films in the summer, but as I understand it, that would have all been tidal.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting, and there's this kind of slight sort of myth of Somerset House pre-embankment, which is not, of course, a myth, because it was directly on the river, and there's a river gate on the base level of Somerset House, a former river gate, which is actually, it was sort of truncated by the building of the embankment, so it's only half visible. And that river gate would have boats, watermen would have directly gone through the river gate, and I suppose most likely they would have actually tethered more or less in where the courtyard is, but I haven't found any kind of very precise facts, so there's a lot of imagination involved in the specifics of it. But Somerset House has had so many different histories as well. I mean, but one of them for certain is very linked with the water. That's a former home to the Navy Board, and it had that, you know, it was right sat on the river, so that's a very significant part of my research and my interest.
And one of the exhibits in your exhibition is this 1849 cholera map, which is fascinating to look at, because what it shows is that the concentration of cholera was particularly high in poorer districts in London, and it's particularly systemic on the southern side of the river. That's very noticeable when you look at that exhibit. Explain to me a little bit about how transformative the construction of the embankment was around that kind of public health issue of the time.
The sewer was not built to end cholera, and it was an advantageous side effect that it did. But at the time, they believed that cholera was carried in poisonous miasmas, airborne. What infrastructure projects do you think will have a similarly big impact in London?
Well, I think 2018, 2019, these are quite exciting times for London in terms of infrastructure projects. Crossrail is a phenomenal piece of engineering in the construction and design phases, and 2018 is going to see trains start to run on different parts of the line, and then by 2019 we're going to have full line-wide service east to west across London. What I think the public may not appreciate is the sheer scale of the size of these tunnels. As Londoners, we're used to the Victorian tube system, so I think the public's going to be incredibly engaged and excited when they see this great new infrastructure, transport infrastructure coming on stream. Obviously, as we've talked about in this interview already, the Thames Tideway Tunnel, the super sewer, whilst in some ways an unglamorous sector, it's critically important to the environment and to public health and other aspects like that. I think one thing that often gets overlooked is that major infrastructure projects are actually social justice projects as well. And there are these other benefits which are not perhaps at the foremost of people's minds, and perhaps you only appreciate as you look back in history at the transformational nature of some of these projects. We don't just work here in London or in the UK, we work across the world, and in other parts of the world the kind of sewage infrastructure that we have in this country simply doesn't exist, and we've been working with a number of countries on their programs to develop their wastewater treatment and their wastewater infrastructure generally. So there's a nice connection for us between your exhibition, our association with Somerset House, and the work that we're doing in other countries as construction and infrastructure lawyers. Eloise, I just wanted to thank you for your time this morning. It's a fascinating exhibition for anybody who has an interest in infrastructure, public health, the relationship of computational fluid dynamics between infrastructure projects and the human body till the 22nd of April. Thank you for your time today.